Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market, where we discuss everything to do with the modern market every single day. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money in an ideal world on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have JP Morgan predicting Bitcoin price to continue to soar over the next 8 weeks. We've got a bit of an analysis on Bitcoin, and we've got a touch on Sol as well, going past $200, which has just happened. Coinbase officially launching cbBTC on Solana as well. Maybe that has something to do with it. Bit of a breakdown coming there. And then on the other side, memes are still popping off. Biggest meme movers being Zero Bro up 140%, Drift up 90%, Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency plus 85%. We'll have a little bit of a meme breakdown and some strategies we are employing ourselves. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs and a discussion on how to manage portfolios as things get increasingly frantic and hectic, which is definitely how I'm feeling a little bit. So stay tuned for that. We've got Legendary and Bread in the co-host seats today. We're ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice because we don't know anything for sure, to be perfectly honest. And so you've got to proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. That's it. That's the message. Legendary, it is Friday. It is the 8th of November. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm doing pretty well. Talking about not knowing anything and how risky the market is. Saw someone with a pretty degenerate trade yesterday, opening up a 4 million long position on ETH after ETH already had moved with a 60x leverage on intent on exit. It's pretty insane position. Basically, if you don't have enough collateral with that, just a 1.5% tick down would liquidate you. Probably that person has a bit more collateral in the background for that not to happen. However, they did take out 60K in profit overnight and are, I think, up 6 figures on the trade already. But pretty degenerate to be that confident to 60x leverage a $4 million long on ETH after it already had moved up quite significantly.
You can just feel it at the moment. You can just feel that people are willing to like really start slinging stuff around. That's what I can feel. Like, obviously, we do say the media is a great, probably leading indicator actually of how things are going, because we're just on the timeline. I'm scrolling every single day trying to find the stuff. And typically, the more stuff there is, the harder it is for me to synthesize into news. And the harder it is for me to choose like which tickers I should include, which stuff I should include is indicative of like how crazy things are getting. And I can definitely just feel that at the moment. Bread, how are things going from your perspective? How are you feeling in this kind of more frantic environment?
So I got 1 foot in, 1 foot out because like my life is frantic too, right? I'm out here in Asia. I'm about to eat some crickets tonight because I think we're gonna go to a night market. Yeah,
Very nice.
had some mango sticky rice. Things are good, and we have DevCon next week, so a little hectic here in life, but also in the markets too. I'm honestly, me, I don't do a lot of trading, but I am starting to pick up some podcast listening, and yeah, like people are cracking beers on the podcast because they're feeling euphoric. So it's a shift, man. It's whether or not you agree with what's going on with Trump policies or just conservative policies broadly, like it's a paradigm shift right now for what could potentially happen for our industry, and I think everyone is feeling that in all kinds of ways. So risk on, have fun.
Have fun. That will be the objective. But as you said, I think I saw D. We're going to discuss this in a bit more detail in a bit. D's shared like a really helpful post. I think getting some kind of plan in place, like got to put a plan in place from the people who've been around in 2021, which includes ourselves. But that was at least my first time around. Maybe it was Legendary's second time around. But I'm not actually sure about you. So it'd be interesting to hear all of our perspectives there. Be like taking into account all of that madness that happened. What would we do? How would we do things around this time? What are our strategies to not round trip everything and see what we make disappear in front of our eyes, which did happen just a little bit in 2021 to a certain degree. Right, before we get there into that discussion, and we will also be discussing the main headlines, let's get into the price action and headlines for today so you know what is coming up, starting with the price action itself. We have Bitcoin just up a couple of percent, pushing past 76K at 76.3K. You've got ETH up 4% at 2.9K, going past 2.9. Solana up 9%, though, pushing past $200 for the first time in a while. Just to get some weekly perspective, yes, people have been talking about a bit of a DeFi renaissance potentially on ETH, but on the weekly, yes, ETH has outperformed Bitcoin. Bitcoin's up 8% on the week. ETH is up 16% on the week, but Solana still up 21% on the week, even in the perspective of some type of DeFi renaissance in ETH, because the major DeFi protocols are on ETH. It's still Solana that is outperforming aggressively. I've got a little post to share on that in a bit. Getting into the headlines themselves, we've got JP Morgan predicting Bitcoin price to continue to soar over the next 8 weeks. They said we continue to see room for the Trump trade to reverberate over the coming 8 weeks, also in a similar fashion to 2016. It added that despite Bitcoin surging on Trump's victory and gold dropping, Trump policies are likely to be supportive of both into 2025. We'll have more of a breakdown there in a little bit. We also want to touch on Sol's price action. Coinbase, in the second headline, officially launched cbBTC on Solana. This is obviously their wrapped Bitcoin product. They launched this on ETH not long ago. Now it's on Sol. Very interesting to see that. And finally, the biggest meme movers, Zero Bro up 140%, Drift up 90%, the DeFi protocol on Solana, and Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, up 85%. Full disclosure, that was the one I told you, Brad, on the day of the election night. That's the one that I just pressed the button. I wanted to press the button on something. That was the one I pressed in very, very, very small size. So feeling quite good about that one. Notable sales, Sam Spratt, Skull of Lucy selling for 100 ETH, CryptoPunk 39 ETH, and Azuki Golden Fishing Rod selling for 825 ETH. Legendary, that's the price action and the headlines. Let's head to the NFT market, see what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Starting with Bored Apes. Bored Apes down 3.6%, lost at 11 ETH floor, sitting at 10.7 ETH right now. Pudgy Penguins, however, have another upside day, down, up 2%, 8.54 ETH floor for them. They went pretty low over the last week, but they're still down over the last 7 day, minus 1.6% for them, but they seem to recover with ETH pumping. Azuki's, they are pretty flat, 4.92 ETH for them. Milady's down 3% at a 4.45 ETH floor. And if we take a look at one of the gaming collections, Pirate Nation actually up 8% over the last 24 hours at a 0.88 ETH floor, but still down 11% over the last 7 day. That collection used to trade quite well over that 1 ETH floor, but has lost it a bit, but it seems that it's gaining a bit of momentum back. And if we also take a look at the ordinal side of things, there is one mover that's standing out quite a lot, and it's the Bitcoin Wizards. They're up 33% at a 0.17 BTC floor over the last 24 hours with quite a fair amount of volume, 1.24 BTC volume over the last 24 hours, and a positive price performance over the last 7 days, up 32%.
Yeah, I think that's at least in part to do with that Wizard token is getting swept aggressively. I think there's been one whale in particular buying up the Wizard rune. So good to note that. Getting into the Web3 roundup to get up to with everything else. China TV emphasizes Trump's support of crypto capital. Robinhood chief legal officer is leading the race to become the new SEC chair. Obviously, people are waiting for Gensler to be sacked. Trump has been very anti-Gensler. So that seems to be the front runner at the moment. Detroit announces that this is from news from Watcher Guru. Detroit becomes the largest US city to accept Bitcoin and crypto for taxes. That's something I wouldn't have expected to happen just yet, but looks like that is happening. And Eclipse announces Mainnet Live. This is the first SVM L2 with Celestia underneath. In a bit more news around the space, Kobe's Up Only podcast tweets again, sparking rumors of return. Kobe's actually just changed his profile picture back to his original one, which has got a lot of people excited. Legendary trader on the timeline starting to be slightly more active. It looks like that podcast might come back. And Epic announces partnership with Play Solana for its first gaming console, where Epic will be airdropped to first 3K units. I think that's a pretty cool gaming integration for Mando and the Epic team. That's the Web3 roundup. That's the price action. Those are the headlines. That's everything you need to know from the last 24 hours. Legendary. Before we get into the main headlines discussion, is there anything catching your attention from those news stories?
Yeah, on a side note, on the Kobe stuff, it's quite fun to see the discussion of the new class on crypto X asking who Kobe is, because they just don't remember that guy because they weren't around. That was fun to see. On a more serious note, I find it interesting to see that China TV News, the China Central TV, reporting positively on Trump supporting crypto. I know that we love to read things into what China is doing, and like every slightest news that we can read as China becoming pro crypto, we love to report on the space in general. But it's been very interesting to observe like the international reactions to both Trump getting elected, but also to the reactions on the crypto and stock market in particular.
Interesting. Yeah, I found the China stuff's interesting. The Kobe stuff's funny too. Like I can't believe. I guess this is what happens though, right? Like every mini generation that passes, you're kind of only as relevant as your last. It's kind of like in sport. Like you win the title one year. Are you going to come back next year? Are you going to be as motivated? Like, of course, there'll be certain people who remember, and certain people might share your story, but you're only really as successful or as useful as your previous 6 months, a year in the space. People have very, very short memories here. And I think it's pretty tough to stay relevant for a long time. Obviously, Kobe should be outside of that bracket. The funny thing I was thinking was, what would happen if he was like, yes, Up Only's back, everyone would get super excited, and us as a show, we're like, okay, well, we've got our time slot. Can you imagine if Up Only came out and it's like in our time slot or in someone else's time slot, like one of the major shows? It would be absolutely catastrophic. Can you imagine? Like it literally has the possible, because I don't know if crypto media before hadn't really matured, right? Or at least not in this live streaming arena. I'm sure people do it, but you might have YouTube videos. You've obviously got the block, you've got Decrypt, you've got all of those more traditional media, which is more written, to be honest. They'd absolutely destroy someone's whole business model, Brad.
I think you guys are marked safe. So like the modern market's
The
marked
earlier
safe
you are,
that.
the less likely it's going to happen.
Well, that, and it's just a straight up different take on current events, right? Like the Daily Show stuff, like keeping current, like this is different than what they did. It was much slower, much broader scope, and honestly, you got a little bit of insider stuff, which is what everyone dug. So yeah, it would be catastrophic for some podcasts, I think, because that's clear vertical. But Daily Show spaces, I think, is frankly the good thing to be in, and it's marked safe.
I like it. Well, I'm happy to take that line. Legendary. Any reflection there? Are we marked safe? Is anyone marked safe?
I think it's interesting, right? We kind of grew up with like linear TV, where you used to have a program and someone else was deciding what you're watching. Then we went to like all the streaming services, and you decide when you watch and what you watch. But with the live shows, there's kind of like a bit of the comeback that someone else is deciding when you watch the news, if you want to watch them live. Like obviously you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Music, but it's kind of funny how we established this like mini program of shows in crypto, with us at 7 a.m., with Coffee with Captain following after, with the Bodogos show. And it's interesting how basically everyone's been like very respecting of each other's time slot, and it's like you almost start to have that feeling that you own a time slot in a certain sense, but ultimately you don't own a time slot. And when a new show or a new podcast comes in and they take it, then you have to figure out if you want to deal with that or what your best reaction to that is. But it's fun to see that in our little bubble.
Yeah, I think it's fun. It's interesting. That was the funny thing I was thinking, but good that he's back, I think, and seemingly quite bullish at the moment. So enjoying that. Look, because of how bullish everyone is getting, this I think is an important conversation that we had to have. I often observe my own emotions and my own like changes in patterns, and try to determine like where we are in the cycle, how things are going, how other people feeling. And it feels like the last few weekends have been nuts in the trenches, and I feel like during the week things have been going pretty aggressively too. And I think it's helpful sometimes to stand back and be like, look, what's the strategy here? We've just had 3 days ago the outcomes of the election. everyone is going hyper bullish now. You've literally got JP Morgan coming out saying, yes, and we think this is going to continue for 8 weeks. Everyone, or all the stars are aligning in some way. What's the plan? Obviously, if you take a super long view, people think lots of stuff will go forever, but being very, very realistic, some of the assets that we're all in are not going to go forever, right? We might be long on the industry, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're long on every single coin in perpetuity in the way that you might be long on Bitcoin. So this is the conversation I wanted to have, like, what's the plan moving forward? And I thought this tweet from Dees was very helpful, because he was someone who, I think he's shared before, his NFT bag alone went to 8 figures in the previous cycle. And I don't think he sold out of that. If he's written publicly, if it ever got to that again, he would press the sell button on at least a good number of those things. And so here's some bits of advice that he shared in this tweet, which I think would be interesting to discuss from you guys. He said, getting some questions from people who are here where I was at the beginning of last cycle. And so here are some of the things I'd recommend. Spoiler alert, the most important things are having a steady income and getting a bit lucky. So keep that in mind as we go through some of these learnings. Number 1, make a new wallet with an amount of money you're comfortable completely evaporating. This should be disposable money you can replace with excess capital from your job. Number 2, gamble larger chunks of this wallet on things you see with proven community and momentum. Be comfortable hitting a 2 to 6x return and selling your bag. You're more likely to make a 100x by compounding 2 to 6x wins than you are hitting a 100x with size. Number 3, gamble small chunks of this wallet on very high upside plays that are most likely going to zero but could be a 100x. These things have to be things you actually believe in, or you'll not be able to hold for the 100x because you'll sell all the first multiples. Number 4, in a bull market, I focus on maximizing how much Bitcoin I'm making rather than USD. If you aren't making more than simply holding majors, you're failing. That's a huge learning for me as well, where you can make as much money as you like, but if Bitcoin has also run that same amount, then you could have just got that by holding. So it's not just about the core gain, it's about how you're performing against the majors. Frankly, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's ETH or Sol. Find a group of people in a similar position as yourself and make a group chat together. Doing it alone is very difficult. I'm paraphrasing now. This is the least fun part, but very necessary once you make it out of the trenches. You need to think about your taxable gains. Everyone gets bored when we start talking about tax, but do cover yourself. He gives an example here of how he made certain gains at a particular, when ETH was a particular price, did not sell those. ETH went down, still owed the same amount in dollars, but now he had less money to play with. That exact same thing happened to me as well in the last cycle. Not fun. Yes, you can cover it in the end, but it just eats into your overall profits. And then a final, more somber warning: statistically, most of you are not going to make it, but some of you will. If you don't have a plan and give up easily, this is not for you. If you're a dedicated and hungry grinder, you can put yourself in the position to get lucky and make it out. Legendary Bread, we'll come to both of you here for maybe just like 1 or 2 bits that you like the most, or that you either agree with the most, or that resonate with you, or frankly, that if you disagree with as well. Legendary first, what is resonating with you? What are you disagreeing with here or agreeing with?
Things that resonate most with me are the point 2 and 3, which is to gamble the larger chunks of the wallet on the 2 to 6x wins and the smaller chunks on the stuff with higher upside. That's essentially how I approach I've constantly been approaching my trading style as well. And that is especially important also in the trenches. If you want to trade meme coins, it's very unlikely that you're going to catch that 10K, 50K shitter that runs to 5 mil, and you're just going to put 2 Sol in and hold it until it's up to 200 Sol. Whereas with some of the things, look at Modeng today, Modeng up to 300 mil again, Kraken Pro using Modeng as the PFP on X. You can, if you have conviction in that play, just wait for it to retrace. It did retrace almost down to 100 mil. Go in with size there. There's more liquidity to do that and clear a 50 to 150 Sol trade with that, if whatever capital stacks you're trading with. So that is something that resonates a lot with me. But I also get that, like that FOMO. Especially, I have a good amount of wallet trackers on. I'm currently tracking like 60-ish wallets, and they trade quite a lot. And if I do that, I kind of want to have like my hand in, like in a poker game. I want to see the turn. I want to see the river, and I'm happy to do that and fire like smaller bets at that and see them play out, knowing that my the majority of my gains come from the midterm trades. They come from exactly those swing trades. They come from the things that I specialize more on, and also to a large extent the airdrop stuff of that. So this risk management is super important, because it gets tempting. And like, I've been in crypto since 2016. I've been here for 8 years, and I'm still tempted to do like stupid shit. And I did that yesterday and 2 days ago. I did before the election. I had the 10x leveraged long on Doge, which could have very well wiped me overnight. It didn't. I got lucky with that. Yesterday I had a 4x leveraged long on Peanut, thinking that it's going to go up. That worked out well. But I know how my risk profile is changing from basically being, oh, I have my bet size, I want to keep that constant. I think that's the addition that I would add. Keep your bet sizes constant. Don't change them around, because that's going to negatively affect your EV. And resist the temptation to be like, oh, my conviction is so strong on Peanut, I'm going to do the leverage long on that. Again, worked out for me, but most likely if you keep doing this, you will ride parts of a portfolio, if not your entire portfolio, to zero. So keeping bet sizes constant is important to also like keep your EV smoothened out.
Yeah, sizing is so important. Like being able to appropriately size what something's relevant for from the one perspective, just for you as a person with your portfolio size, what's the right amount, but also relative to the upside. We were talking about like high cap memes the other day versus mid cap memes versus low cap memes. And it's like, well, what's the probability of that high cap meme doing the 5x versus what's its probability of going down 80%? And like, if they're relatively similar and you're risking a huge amount for that 2x, if you're risking a huge amount for a 2x, you could just buy Bitcoin and hopefully get a 2x. So you could buy Sol for a 2x. So it's like, what's the relative risk, I think is a really important thing. And then you can kind of size appropriately. Brad, either a reflection on what we've been speaking about or maybe a different point from yourself.
I'm going to do this one for everyone in the crowd who is like me and is not a trader. I am not focusing on risking my capital to earn more capital. And I think there is a perfectly clear vertical in this space where you can contribute non-monetarily and receive tokens. So honestly, that is where I don't have the mindset, the drive, or I care honestly enough to like trade. Like, it just doesn't appeal to me. And like, I wish it did. Doesn't. Fine. What I do like doing is experimenting, writing, contributing in other ways. Like, that's what I enjoy doing. So I'm finding a way to do all of that stuff, just receive tokens and then just sell tokens. So input non-monetary shit, sell monetary shit. Like, that's the flow I want to like create throughout this cycle. Like, I'm doing it now since I'm part of a protocol. I did it with the content stuff where like I can, write tweets, do whatever, and try to express that and say, hey, I would prefer tokens as opposed to cash payment, get exposure that way. That for me is more mentally in line with what I enjoy, and I think leads to my success more often than not. So that would be my 2 cents. Those were good tips. If you're a trader, you don't have to be a trader.
I think that's really refreshing to hear, to be honest, because I think being in crypto, this is actually to people's detriment, almost certainly. Take Deez's very last point. Statistically, most of you aren't going to make it. Why are most people not going to make it? Well, because probably statistically in any kind of gambling trading environment, there's a few people who win big, there's some people who win, and then the majority lose. That's probably the same in any, it's like, it doesn't matter about whether it's crypto, it's probably the same in stocks, investing in stocks as well, if you take a trading mindset. But thinking more broadly, there's just a huge opportunity. Like if you're able to produce valuable content or contribute to something that's bigger than yourself, you don't need to get tempted to do this stuff, because you might just make everything else evaporate. And the upside is actually pretty big. You saw the other day, this is an example we shared on the show. I think we shared it as an opportunity on the show. Then we shared it as it happened for us. Eigenlayer, which is obviously the biggest Ethereum restaking protocol, had this creator reward where if you had just written, I don't know how they tracked it perfectly, but if you had used the word Eigenlayer in a tweet, I'm assuming this is how they tracked it, and it came from your profile, you got up to, it was 2,000 tokens, which was, I think, up to $8,000 at one point. And then there was another higher bracket where I think maybe if you'd written something more educational, there was a 4,000 token reward, which at the time was $16,000. Brett and I got 4,000 tokens each from our personal things, which added up to $16,000 at the time for just writing educational stuff about Eigenlayer. Like, that's an outrageously good trade. And I actually do think about it into, like, everyone else is talking about trading as trades. But in terms of your time, I think that's a pretty decent trade, because you got huge upside by producing useful content as well. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind, whether that's, an unexpected gift that comes your way, or if it's something more formal where you're working towards something with people. Legendary, you've kind of been on the content arc as well. Obviously, we're doing that together. Any final reflections here?
Both are very, very, very valid approaches, and I would make the point that these is referencing to have that stable income. It's definitely the content arc for me. It kind of allows me to trade the rest of my portfolio. But I think the key takeaway is really to ask yourself, do you outperform the majors? And if you don't, then just stop doing what you're doing. And if you want to have more volatility, you could still go with a 2x leverage long on BTC or on Solana, because we look at the last month, BTC is up 20%, ETH is up 20%, Solana is up 40%. Do a 2x leverage long on Solana with a bigger size. If that's your conviction, do 80%. And if you can't outperform 80% on a month, probably most people cannot do. And they're using time to do that, time that they could use to build a business, to build a content arc, to build whatever they want to build, might not be the best idea to keep trading. That is the reality of that.
Yeah. Final point on this, as since we've kind of expanded into what other alternative opportunities you can do if you don't want to like be on Photon shooting Sol into this thing and like watching the chart going every 5 seconds, just allocating capital to protocols which are going to be doing a token, like providing liquidity. There's various things that you can do. Like we did it with Blast. We'll do it with Abstract. There's Bearer Chain. There's Monad. There's Mega ETH. There's all these tokens. All these tokens coming to market. All these teams coming to market with new protocols. There's just, I think in the spreadsheet that I shared of my returns, which Brett castigated and has produced a better one with like nicer, prettier bar charts. Something like 60% return on capital from the start of the year, which is outrageous, right? Like that's pretty decent return. And again, it's just something to think about, that there are other ways to slice this stuff. Look, we want to get into the bigger discussion today. We've got 3 very important headlines to touch on. First one is that JP Morgan has called the Bitcoin run to continue for at least the next 8 weeks. We also want to touch on Sol going past 200. So going to pass the Legendary here, give us a bit of a breakdown and thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's first take a look at what argument JP Morgan is making as to why BTC could run for another 8 weeks at least. Obviously, they're saying Trump policies are likely to be supportive of crypto, of Bitcoin, specifically in 2025. They're also talking about the inflation hedge that they think BTC is, but most importantly, they're making the point that look back in history, look at 2016 when Trump got elected, look how the Bitcoin chart looked there. Lovely that I get this this ad on TradingView. Let me set this up again real quick, because the key takeaway is that in 2016, BTC used to be at a couple $100, and it did run quite massively. I'm just want to make sure to get this up on screen as well. There we go. BTC in 2016 used to be 500, 600, 700, 800 ish dollar range. Then it went up in 2017 to 2K, 3K, and shot up pretty rapidly. I'm sharing this on screen, all the way up to 20K. So did basically more than a 20x after Trump got elected. Obviously, the main reason for that is not Trump being elected. And obviously, I wouldn't expect BTC to do a 20x now, because the price is way higher. There's way more institutional money. But that was one of the points that JP Morgan was making in their analysis, seeing, look at how it played out historically. That's another reason why we think that BTC could have a major leg up over the next 8 weeks. A couple other factors that might be helpful as well is, obviously we had another rate cut yesterday, down 25 bips. Market, if you look at Polymarket, that is expecting another one of those in December, with a 72% chance on a bet that has more than $3 million in volume. thinking that another 25 pips decrease is going to happen. We're in a 4.5 to 4.75% range right now. Going down another 0.25% is expected, and it's also has been announced that this will happen. And one final point, again, as you mentioned it earlier, not BTC related, but related to Solana. Solana did surpass $200, sitting at $204 right now, and is seeing, that's very interesting to look at on CoinGlass, is seeing an increase in 24-hour volume, $12 billion in 24-hour volume, increase of 24%. If you look at the other tokens, if you look at BTC, that's down 26%, ETH down 18%, Doge down 33%. And also, if you start to compare absolute numbers, again, Solana doing 12 bill in 24-hour volume, ETH doing 40 bill, BTC doing 70 bill, it is a quite significant chunk, even compared to the big two majors, BTC and ETH.
Super interesting. Great breakdown, like going through the Bitcoin stuff as well as moving in to the Sol stuff. I wrote this piece on Sol earlier today. It went out in my newsletter. I want to share it for people because people are obviously still super bullish on Sol, but the Trump presidential victory seems to have ignited this feeling underneath the ETH people, which is we're back. Like this can potentially reignite the DeFi season. There's all these protocols that have been hamstrung by very, very bad regulations. And I think the price performance has been moving related to that. However, I don't know if that's enough to defeat what Sol, to the extent that they even need to try, which I'm not suggesting that they do. The Sol ETH chart is looking so powerful. And in this piece that I wrote earlier today, the thinking is this for ETH. They said, the thinking is Trump is very clearly very pro crypto. Whilst that is obviously good for all of crypto, and markets have reflected that already, the majority of colossal DeFi protocols exist on ETH. One of the things that has held these DeFi protocols back has been the inability to turn on any kind of fee switch. So the bet is that a pro-Trump, who is pro-crypto, pro-DeFi, given that he's literally launched a DeFi protocol on ETH, he's vocally anti-Gensler, create better regulatory conditions for crypto and DeFi, and that means ETH can be unleashed. At least that is the thinking. However, realistically, looking at the difference in market cap between ETH and Sol, I could see the gap continuing to close. That gap is still pretty significant. ETH is about 3 times bigger, more than 3 times bigger than Solana at the moment. But Sol has outsized mindshare at the moment, and their protocols are performing very well versus ETH too. Something that I don't think people have quite realized. So I said at the top that the biggest titanic DeFi protocols are on ETH. But actually 4 of the top 15 protocols by fee revenue are on Sol right now. So you've got Jito, Radium, Photon, and Pump. And admittedly, 2 of those 4 are like very speculative ones and lean very aggressively into the meme stuff. But nevertheless, like they're earning way more than people think. And the demand for base currency Sol should only really continue to rise if that trend continues. And that's not a specifically bearish ETH post. It's more just like, look, yes, I think the Trump presidential victory is really bullish for ETH because it does legit unlock some of that DeFi potential. And we saw that immediately on the day after, where Wintermute have proposed to do some type of fee sharing with the staked ENA holders for the Athena protocol, the synthetic dollar, the huge synthetic dollar protocol, which got more than $2 billion in TVL. They reacted immediately. They were like, right, let's do this. Let's turn this on. Let's get money going to the token holders. And then ENA pumped, I think it was 30 or 40% yesterday. So that potential will get unlocked. I just don't know if it will be enough to suppress the huge momentum that Sol is experiencing right now anyway. So don't necessarily think Sol ETH is going to turn around immediately. That's my perspective, though. Legendary, would love to hear Brett's thoughts in a second as well. But Legendary, any response to that first?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you mentioned the mind share so often, also taking a quick look at Kaito Analytics on that. DeFi had flipped AI with a 15% mind share on the entire timeline, memes at 13%. Got as high yesterday, even as 18%, and came close to flipping AI as well, but has been correcting down ever since. And in terms of the, where is it? This one. In terms of the token mind share, BTC is still leading with 23%, ETH 19%, and Solana is getting with 17.5%, really close to actually flip ETH's mindshare on the timeline, which would be huge because obviously relatively Solana is smaller than ETH and there's more people talking about ETH than Solana. So from this position, Solana had a relatively stronger mindshare, but now being potentially able to flip it in absolute terms is a massive move, in my opinion.
Very interesting stuff. I wonder whether Bread will be able to come in on this, but maybe just straight after the next headline, because Bread's going to present now on Coinbase, on Sol. And I think that's going to lead us into his take on Sol versus ETH, DeFi happening on Sol instead of ETH, DeFi happening on ETH instead of Bitcoin. What's your take here, Bread, on Coinbase announcing the wrapped Bitcoin product on Solana?
Yeah. So first, gotta say what it is. TLDR is Coinbase launched cbBTC on Solana. It is a 1-to-1 backed representation of Bitcoin on Solana. So now people with all of this SOL that they required from meme coining through, playing in Jito, whatever else, they now can get exposure to Bitcoin while staying on Solana. And again, the BTC is actually custodied by a trusted party. That trusted party being Coinbase. That's what makes you think you can redeem it. Similar to a stable coin, except it's Bitcoin. Cool. So it's good that they've done that on Solana. This was the first time that they've actually launched a token on Solana. That's obviously a good signal. What this did for me is it got me curious about, okay, if they're doing this, they obviously, we are aware of Solana stealing the headlines, but I wanted to go back and look at some numbers and say, okay, how much has Solana grown over this time? And is it legitimate, whatever. So just some numbers, just because I think it's interesting, because it was interesting to me. We have the growth numbers, and then we have the raw numbers that are actually grown on Solana DeFi. I'm just going to do TVL and stable coins. I think those are two predominantly accepted metrics or relevant metrics for this. So if you look at the TVL since the start of this year, you actually forget how bottom of the barrel it got. From the beginning of the year till now, it has grown 3,300% in TVL on their protocols. Now, some of that is a byproduct of the valuation of SOL actually increasing, right? Because a lot of this TVL is SOL, and as SOL appreciates, the TVL also appreciates. I get that. But again, 3,300% growth from 237 million to 7.9 billion, whereas Ethereum has grown 237%. So it has gone up, not nearly as much, right? And then you have, maybe before going into the stables, so that's an impressive number. You hear that and you go, wow, it is growing. It is doing great. But then you look at the relative numbers and see okay, raw, how big is the DeFi on Ethereum relative to SOL? And if you take the TVL at the beginning of the year, it was 1% SOL of Ethereum. So Ethereum has 25 billion USD, whereas SOL had 237 million, right? So 1% of Ethereum was SOLs. Now that has grown to 13%. Right. So it has grown percentage wise relative to Ethereum, but still it only represents 13% of what is captured in Ethereum DeFi TVL wise. So there's that. Going down to stables growth, it's been 218% for Solana and 100% for Ethereum. It's just relative growth. And then on a raw number comparison between the two, Solana at the beginning of the year was 2% of Ethereum, and now is 4%. So growing. They on both a percentage basis compared to Ethereum raw numbers, it is growing, but the scale of difference between these two things is still pretty dramatic. But when you hear that, right, you talked about it just a minute ago. When you hear that, you think, does Solana have the opportunity to close that gap, right? So you hear some people might hear that and say, oh, Solana is still small, or you're going to hear that and say, oh, Solana is still small. There's still so much it can grow and mature and have value accrue to it. So I thought those numbers are interesting. I think honestly, it's kind of Solana cycle. Just kind of lean into it. Don't fight the narrative. I know there's a tendency to want to especially from the Ethereum side, to kind of cope because the price hasn't moved. I'm not going to fight momentum. I'm still hearing a lot of people that are more traders than myself lean into it and say they kind of have it. Just let them go and do the thing. So I'm watching it. I have full exposure. I'll keep doing that. And DeFi does seem to be picking up.
Amazing summary. I think it's really, really helpful to get those kind of DeFi to DeFi number comparisons. Watching those proportions, I think, is pretty interesting. I wasn't aware of that, but I guess it's a kind of a similar conclusion to the previous one, right? It feels like Sol is smaller than you think, but given its momentum, I think at least through the lens through which people are looking at it is, okay, well, then there's even more room to grow. I think at least that's the conclusion people are coming to. One follow-up question, Brad, because I think it would be important / interesting for people to get your personal perspective on this. Wrapped Bitcoin is obviously not real Bitcoin. It does represent Bitcoin one-to-one. It's the cbBTC product, especially, potentially more trustworthy than others because it's literally done by Coinbase, and we have a huge amount of respect and trust and wrapped up with Coinbase. This specific product will mean that you can take your meme coin gains and you can siphon off some of it and put it in Bitcoin. We just looked at Deez's article saying one of the things I do during a bull market is I make sure that I'm actually putting stuff into Bitcoin as I go. Is this a product you'd actually use, or would you prefer to hold Bitcoin itself? I put out this post earlier sharing it. I thought, okay, it was good news in the sense that people will be able to, it just gives people more optionality on Sol. But I just put in a comment after, I said, I might actually keep bridging off to respect asset sovereignty. But I suspect that's a minority view. And when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, I need to respect a different chain. It's more just like, no, I will actually want to hold the asset. But maybe that's like a traditional view. What do you think?
I would be fine holding it on Solana. I understand your perspective, especially given the industry and what we have seen in the past. I don't know if I would have said the same thing about Sam back in the day. Like, but this is all built around trust assumptions, right? Like anytime you introduce trust assumptions is when you open yourself up to be hurt. And that's what's hurt people in the past. Sam tricked a lot of people and had held onto their coins and then played with them in the back end and lost it. So I would think I would be okay with it given what I know, because if Coinbase goes away, like if they botch that hard, I'm screwed on like every level because I have a shit ton of their stock. Like I would have so I just ride them or die with them, one of the two.
Fair enough. I think that's fair. Legendary.
Yeah, I take a different thought because I also have a lot of Coinbase stock and I don't want to double risk, because if anything, then I'd rather have my BTC holdings not in cbBTC. It's super convenient, and I hold cbBTC, but I move it off to actual BTC because I don't want to like basically double dip in the risk side. Like kind of people who get super enthusiastic about having a stock options plan with their own company. If the company goes to shit, they lose both their job and their stock options are worthless if they overinvested in them. So this is my copium is I do have a good amount of Coinbase stock, but my BTC is not in cbBTC for exactly that reason, that if something goes wrong with Coinbase, then obviously my BTC will still dump massively, but at least it's separate and it's not basically in the same sphere of influence. I also see that Funky has his hand up on that, and as a Coinbase and BTC maxi, very curious to hear from him.
GM guys, let's not flood our coin bags, please. But all jokes aside, I do want to say that much like the trader when we were talking earlier in the show, I plan on anything I take profit on, half to stables, half to BTC. And I will probably, if I'm going to be on Solana or ETH, obviously I'm going to take some kind of wrapped version. But for de-risking and just being a fan of generally keeping all of our sats in cold storage, I'll probably use something like Thorchain where I don't have to go back to a SEX or anything like that. And I can just make that swap from like an EVM-based wrapped version of the Bitcoin to the native asset and just get it right into the cold storage.
Like it. Nice little hedged answer there, Funky. Appreciate it as a Bitcoin bull and Coinbase bull. One interesting thought I had, Legendary, you mentioned kind of hedging different things. I was speaking to a founder the other day on product and talking about portfolios and how to organize all of these coins, right? We're seeing the movement towards these super trading apps where it's not just confined to different chains. You've got like Infinex, Azura, who are live, where, if you want to use ETH to buy WIF on Solana, you can do that. If you want to use WIF to buy Bitcoin or something, like all of these things are possible. It's going to be like a one in-house thing. And I was wondering, like, when it comes to your portfolio, do you still think in terms of these are my Sol bags, these are my ETH bags, these are my Bitcoin bags, and I want to keep them separate because they're different things? Or do you think moving forward, everything's just going to be collective and it doesn't matter?
No, I don't think of them in a separate way, because I am very flexible to like moving money around. Overarch has made also a very good comment that kind of relates to that in the YouTube comments, saying Solver's is mind numbing, been ongoing for 8 months now. You can own both. Plenty of legit coins have outperformed Solana tenfold. This is why I don't want to think like in those like buckets or brackets, because I want to be able like to swing trade, move capital around, not think, oh, this is my ETH back for the cycle. I have to keep it and be like, fuck it, and like more bullish on Solana now, and I want to use that on Solana. I'm just going to move it over. I'd rather think of my total portfolio value in crypto and see how that number in an ideal case goes up by a lot versus focusing on like the individual things, because then you kind of get into this like maximalist brain, which I don't want to fall like for that thinking fallacy.
Interesting. Okay, just wanted to ask that question. Interested to hear your perspective. Look, we want to hit the final headline now for the week. Actually, Legendary, there's been some big movers on the meme side. You've also been participating a lot on the meme side. Give us a bit of a breakdown, what you're seeing from the trenches over there.
Yeah, absolutely. You had a good post on that as well, kind of echoing the sentiment that I shared also around the election, to be aware of old meme narratives, rather focus on the new things. Attention span is a very short one. And if you look at the big winners of this week, of the last couple of days, you have Peanut, looking at my other screen, currently trading at 120 mil, up 137%. You have Goat, basically in all-time territory at 836 mil. You have Luce, down a bit from the 88 mil or 86 mil high that it hit yesterday, but still very strong at 64 mil. And you have Modeng having that strong comeback and actually clearing the $300 million mark and being quite aggressive with a 34% pump over the last 24 hours. So definitely a lot of volume still in the meme coin trenches, and there seems to be this split still between the AI meme side of things and the more traditional side of meme trading, if you want to put it like that. And it's also, again, dominating in terms of the overall mindshare. If we look at the meme mindshare, however, specifically on Kaito, which I find quite interesting to see, then you have Doge being back in the top spot, obviously, since it has moved quite a lot, both the actual Doge, but also the Doge that you had mentioned, just that it's not a derivative, it's the acronym for the Department of Government Efficiency, which allegedly will be led by Elon Musk, if that ever will be a thing. But the actual real Doge is leading the meme attention charts. Pepe is the second one, Fog the third one, then Mudeng, then Degen, and then we get into the AI territory with Fartcoin, with Goat. And then actually Pubs pretty strong on there with 3%. So basically around half, a bit less than half the mindshare that Pepper currently has, which I found very, very surprising to see.
That's very interesting. And an important follow-up question for me, Legendary, is you've been using these analytics tools quite a lot, and you have been quoting the mindshare stuff quite a lot. Are you finding that data point to be like a leading or a lagging indicator when it comes to price? So if you were to look at that right now and Mudeng is whatever, it's green on the mindshare chart and it's up 77%. Is that a buy signal, or is that a signal to press the sell button?
If you look at it, basically, I think it's a leading indicator. If you look at it over those 24-hour periods, and you look at where is it? Share that again. If you look on the top left corner at the top gainers and the top losers, I do think it's a leading indicator. If obviously you were to extrapolate and look over a 30-day time frame, then you would miss most of the action. Another thing that I find interesting is to look at who the smart people and the degens in the market are following, and not really look like only individual projects, but kind of look like more at the sentiment of those. Are they following mostly new meme coins? Are they following mostly infrastructure projects? And that again would also be a leading indicator to me, because it's actually quite surprising if you think about, like, you feel so much FOMO in the space, but you actually have quite a lot of time with some trades. Goat has, seen this nice increase in mindshare, has topped, now is going up again. And you had a lot of time to position yourself if you looked at the sentiment for gold to get the trade going. You basically had a month time to do this. I mean, the token's a month old, but it climbed in attention pretty quickly. You can see this mindshare thing over there. Then it had the dip, and then it climbed again. And again, the price is climbing with that. So if something stays relevant for a longer time and you can see it regain mindshare, then I think you do have a nice leading indicator for that if you wanted to trade based off mindshare.
Interesting. Okay, that's very helpful. One more personal question, trader to trader. I think this is really important for people to understand the rules for operation when you, particularly when you're using these bots. People have kind of moved off Jupiter main website in order to trade this stuff because this stuff moves too fast. So people are either using Photon, they're either using BullX, maybe there's some Telegram bots as well. Question, because this happened to me. So I was going to actually ask you before the show or after the show. Might as well just ask you here so other people can learn as well. One thing you've been saying to me is, I don't think people are aware of how much money these trading bots are taking off you on every transaction. So I knew that already. So I just want to give you a chance to speak to that. Second question, when I bought something this morning, there was like a huge dip in the price. And I was like, right, I'm going to buy, I wanted to buy 5 SOL. I pressed buy. On the moment it went down, and the amount of slippage I had was quite low. Maybe I didn't have a high enough bribe fee. It executed, and my price that I bought at was so much higher than the price that had even been before the dip. And then I was like immediately 25% down. What happened in that trade? Do you know?
Both to both your questions. The trading bots are, as you said, pretty expensive, taking 2%, most of them, on every trade that you do. Combine that with the priority fee, with the bribe, where you often have a total of 0.05 SOL that you spend on a trade. And I've been making this point that people have been bitching about gas fees on ETH, but they're happy to pay absurd fees on Solana just to be faster in trading memes, which kind of confirms my thinking that if the product is good enough, if the FOMO is high enough, gas fees don't matter. What happened in your case, you could have been MEV'd. I don't know what token you've been trading. I've been MEV'd for less than 5 SOL, to be honest. Personally, I do trade with 20% slippage for the meme coins most of the time. And if I do the 5 SOL or above buys, I either split them up in multiple buys, which I typically do most of the time, but I do them in an MEV protected way. So it's quite absurd to get MEV'd for 5 Solana, but hey, that's the reality that is in the trenches. I'm laughing because Kashmir is commenting in the YouTube comments. It was a sandwich attack. Jared from Subway was lurking and waiting.
That's the nature of fast chains. Like, remember, like it's MEV is a just an equation, right? So if they can make money off the thing relative to how much they have to pay for the opportunity, they're gonna take that opportunity. So if it's a fast and cheap chain that has very, very, very minimal fees to spend that transaction that gets them, if they have to spend 1 cent to make 2 cents, that's 100% gain, right? So they'll take that. That's what you get with these chains.
You will sometimes see those absurd spikes in charts where someone is trying to buy 50 SOL in one clip. It's not MEV protected, and then basically say that's a meme trading at 6 mil. It shoots up to 30 mil and down in the same candle because someone did MEV them with a lot of capital to basically make their trade, not as in your case, be down 25%, but be down 99% on that and take away all of their stake that they wanted to buy in.
Damn. Be careful out there, guys. Luckily, I bought an amazing coin. It's going to 10x after the show when I check how it's doing.
Beautiful. The key learning maybe there is you want to be on the side of infrastructure, right? If you can build a bot and have an MEV bot, you want to be that. If you can be invested in something like Photon, BullX, or the Telegram bots that are taking your trading fees, you make so much money on those volume-based trades, on those volume-based businesses, that it's absolutely insane.
Absolutely. As we said in the middle of the show today, as part of that segment, Photon is actually out earning Pump in the last 24 hours. I think Photon was 14th largest earning protocol by fee revenue in the last 24 hours, and Pump was 15. So shout out to them. Shout out to people building these absolute money printers. Hopefully we can figure out how to continue printing money next week when we are back with you. That is our show for today. Thanks so much to Legendary and Bread for being up on the stage, co-hosting. Thanks to Funky for his contributions as always. And thank you so much for joining us. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X video, and YouTube. You can catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts too. Make sure you subscribe, press that little star thing on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It helps us a lot. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.